Hi. In this video, we'll be showing you how to solder the necessary components to your PCB. We'll start with soldering the female headers that the feather and feather wing slot into. To do this, you'll need your PCB, your long and short headers, your feather or feather wing, and soldering equipment. We'll start by inserting long and short headers into one side of the PCB. We recommend you insert your feather or feather wing into the headers before soldering them in place to make sure they're straight. Solder the end leads of the headers to the PCB. You can then remove the feather from the headers and solder the remaining leads. You can now repeat the same steps for the remaining headers on the other side of the PCB. Once both sides are complete, make sure you can insert your feather or feather wing into the headers on both sides of the PCB. Next, we'll prepare our wires that connect our electrical components to the PCB. For this process, we'll be adding extra wire to our 3-pin or 2-pin wire groups and labeling them according to the provided list. I've gone ahead and cut and stripped extra wires, as well as stripped the grouped wires. It is important to make sure that for this step, you're using all male wires. The male wires will slot into the female wires coming from the controller. You'll also need some method of labeling the different wire groups. For this video, I'll be using masking tape. We'll start with wire group 1, which will connect RX, TX, and ground from the row arm to the PCB. When soldering wires together, don't forget to add heat shrink. We also recommend keeping the wire colors the same to avoid any later confusion. Heat your heat shrink and label this as wire group 1. A similar process can be done for wire group 5. Repeat this for all of the wire groups according to the provided wiring diagram and list. Once all of your wire groups have been prepared, we can now solder them to the PCB. We'll start with wire group 1, which will connect RX, TX, and ground from the row arm to the PCB. Be sure to note that the red wire needs to be soldered to the TX data port, even though it is connected to RX on the row arm. The same switch applies to the yellow TX wire. Once you're done soldering wires to the PCB, you can snip the ends of the leads to make them safer to touch. Repeat this process for each wire group while carefully following the wiring diagram and list provided. Once you soldered all wires to the PCB and labeled them correctly, you can complete the final step, which is inserting the PCB into the mounting spacer and screwing it in place. First, attach standoffs to the 4 corners of the PCB. Now we can screw the PCB into the spacer. Be sure that the wires exit the spacer through the circular hole on the side, and that the PCB is oriented so that the feather wing label on the PCB is parallel to the rectangular slit on the side of the spacer. This ensures that the USB cord from the controller can connect to the feather wing. Also, be sure that wire group 1 is not threaded through the hole with the rest of the wires. This group should stick out of the top of the spacer so that it can connect to the row arm. Align the holes on the standoffs with the holes in the spacer and screw the PCB into the spacer. This concludes the PCB assembly and attachment video. Thanks for watching.